We come a long way from sitting in parks and banging off jobs embarking. Most of the man, them are Ross Clark fathers, trying to get the money from night to the morning. It's a big food room, it passed by aunties round here, but don't do nothing half-hearted. It's rough round here, so the man, them are hardened. Let's not even get into the sagas. We're EastEnders. So
hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny. It's episode 102, episode 2 of the new season. It's Sunday, November 17th, 2024. This episode is going to be about the Central Business District tolling program in New York City. Quick introduction before we get into what that exactly is. We're so used to fees, we're used to taxes, we're used to tickets and all that. We're also used to people complaining about the prices, the tickets, the taxes, the gas prices, and so forth. This show is not about complaining. It's not even about venting, and it's not even just about pointing out the theft and violence that's being inflicted on the people. We already know that. I really don't like the complaining. I really don't like throwing the blame somewhere else. I point the fingers back at myself, at us, because within us is also where the solutions are. So talking about how corrupt the politicians are, I've already done that. I've long ago, like early in the episodes. The show is no longer about that. The show is about, and has always been about, principles and values. And it's about understanding the hidden motives behind everyday actions. And then also connecting all the disconnected pieces of information. Okay, connecting the dots is what we're doing here. So the Central Business District tolling program, it's going to become the nation's first congestion pricing plan. Congestion pricing meaning to reduce traffic at areas there is a lot of traffic, you basically get paid a toll. Like we already have the toll roads, but now it is based on just entering a certain area of the city is paid. That's unprecedented in America. So Governor Kathy Hochul announced the program will be implemented and the vehicles will be required to pay $9 to enter the lower and midtown Manhattan areas during peak hours. So it was originally proposed in June actually, but the program was abruptly halted and never implemented. And at that time she told reporters, "After careful consideration, I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended consequences." This is what she said at the time. So originally that price was $15 for most vehicles. But it was actually, it's funny, it was written in the Washington Post just this week. She announced it this week. This initiative was abruptly paused amid pushbacks from drivers and a flurry of lawsuits. Yeah, that's the reason it was paused. Not careful consideration from them or Kathy Hochul. It was a pushback by the people that made them pull this back. But that's what happens when you get pushed back, right? When you get pushed back, you get pushed away. If you're smart, you're going to take a few steps back. You're going to back off or retreat and then come back when the anger wears off. That would be the intelligent, strategic thing to do. And that's what the New York government has done. So they're back now. This has come back and it'll take effect January 5th. Now they say the climate-friendly program needs sign-off from officials in the Biden administration, which has been supported, of course, supportive. President-elect Donald Trump, who will return to the White House in January and is expected to roll back a slew of climate initiatives, criticized the plan in a Thursday statement. So that's another monkey wrench in this scenario that, okay, they're going to get this through, but very likely Donald Trump is going to pull this back. And yes, this is a good thing, right? We may have some of these globalist initiatives rolled back. As they say, it's true that he has talked against some of these global climate initiatives. So it might happen, but I wouldn't celebrate it because you know what else is going to get rolled back? Along with these initiatives, they're going to get rolled back. But what else is going to get rolled back is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to get rolled back very soon, right? So actually, it's much more effective to implement a measure that way, meaning to bring it in now, have Trump remove it when he takes office, and then when he leaves office, bring it back after. And that's because this progressive public support that's been the engine behind everything that's been going on in America, that progressive, general, liberal, whatever you want to call it, that support, that public support base, it's going to be out of power for several years. So they're going to be pretty mad. So they're going to be ready to jump back on this. And undoubtedly, some of Trump's supporters are going to sour on him, because that's what always happens with any relationship. You know, they say familiarity breeds contempt. That's how it goes. That's how it goes when you first meet a girl and she can do no wrong, right? Every moment with her is great. Everything's amazing. You can't find any faults with her. But then you spend some time with her, especially when you start living with her, right? You notice all the little things. And then after a while, you're seeing all the faults that you didn't see before. No doubt she is seeing the same thing with you. So you're seeing all these faults that you didn't see at the time. Other people could see them. They were telling you the whole time. They tried to tell you, you didn't listen. That's how it goes. That's how it's going to go with everybody that's so, gung-ho on Trump now. Bottom line is, though, any rolled back policies are going to return with a stronger momentum. That's how it goes. Whenever there's a push toward any kind of freedom that is often turned into nationalism, all the globalist initiatives, they come back with a renewed vitality, with a stronger momentum. That's how it goes. Now, at a news briefing Thursday, Hochul said that the $15 toll plan stopped over the summer because of the cost. She said, "Back in June, I stood up on behalf of hardworking families and simply said no," she said, citing the cost of groceries, rent, and childcare. And I found that really interesting because that was only June. So from June to November, have those costs decreased? Is it easier to pay for groceries, rent, childcare? Clearly not. And I don't just say that to catch the New York governor talking garbage or lying. Again, I've heard it so much. I've exposed it so much. It's like low-hanging fruit at this point for me to bash politicians. It's a joke. But I do find this valuable to highlight for a different reason. And the reason is, this is just another example of the fact that I try to stress all the time. The fact that while government makes the laws and enforces them, it's the people that allow these laws to take effect. So ultimately, it's the people that have the final say on what gets implemented. This plan was originally proposed in 2019, but it wasn't formalized and finalized until June of earlier this year, 2024. But because of the pushback, the public outrage, the lawsuits, and the strength of the reasoning of the people, and the intensity of the resistance, that's why it wasn't implemented. So ultimately, all we got to blame is ourselves, because it's the people that allow the laws. If it wasn't for the people, we'd have like tyranny and hardcore slavery already. If it wasn't for the ideas we held, if it wasn't for the resolve that we have, the little bit that we do have. So fundamentally, throughout history and inherently, national governments are incrementally transgressive. They take more and more the more you allow. Increasingly, over time, it's a road toward tyranny. And tyranny is what? It's a transfer of liberty, it's a transfer of power, it's a transfer of property ownership from individuals to a central authority. Okay? No matter who's in power, the life cycle of any government is an increasing encroachment until that government collapses and is replaced by a new one. You could look at any government, right? The monarchy of England, the Soviet Union, it's going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until it destroys the society, and then the new government comes in. Okay, usually more lax, usually more reasonable, usually more soft, but increasingly it becomes more controlling. Okay? The stronger the people's resistance, knowledge, and involvement in what is proposed, in what is being discussed, and what is being implemented, that's what determines the higher quality of life. The stronger the resistance, the stronger the knowledge, the stronger the involvement of the people, the higher their quality of life is. So it's really not about the type of government. It really isn't, because they're all transgressive. But now, like we have in the United States, and this has spread to other parts of the world, right? Because we got the idea of natural rights, because we got the idea of God-given rights, right? These ideas spread. Okay. Also, because we've got more material freedom and more independence materially in a physical sense. This has given people more power to resist their government, because they're not so dependent on any guy on a throne with a crown on. So that's the bottom line. Now, of course, central authority as a whole is wrong inherently. I just need to point that out. It's so self-explanatory. I skip over it most episodes. We know that God, nature, the universe, all of that force that created the let's stick to God, okay? I don't want to complicate it. God didn't create anyone to give or take orders. That's the bottom line. If you don't believe in God, nature didn't create anybody or to give and take orders. Just biologically, that's not how things work. So the only true law that governs human interaction is the law that only voluntary interactions are legitimate. If anyone initiates an interaction against someone's free will, then they forfeit the protection under this law, meaning they're now in the field. They have chosen the law of the jungle, not the law of the people of value. They're speaking the language of force. They're no longer speaking the language of reason. That's what happens when people try to take what is yours, when people try to engage in violence, right? They break that contract. There's a contract between peaceful people that are not transgressing on anyone's property. That's the social contract. The alleged social contract that people have with the government is false. It never occurred, it never existed. But we do have a social contract by being conceived and born, coming from the flesh and blood of our parents, inhabiting the body with the spirit of life. We take the body and claim it as our property, with the agreement to live by the laws of this world. And that law is really a twofold law. It's love and it's will. Love, of course, is so much more than a sentence. I can't really say it in one sentence, but in the context of natural law, love is the birthright of agency, meaning what's yours is yours and will never be not yours. Nobody can take it away. That's the first part. The second part is will. Will means you have the right to fight for yours, and the moment that one takes something, they have nothing. Meaning they're losing their rights if they're taking your rights. So anything that is taken can be taken back. That is the gift of will. It's the other side of love that people don't talk about. So many people in the world are going to hear that and go, I don't remember reading that in the Bible. And then the rest of the people will go, well, nobody ever talked about that at school. You know, you can't just do that. And that's the problem. We're divided. Non-aggression and self-defense are to be understood together. And there's the beautiful polarity to creation. From the husband and wife that come together to become mother and father, all the way down to the subatomic, where the subjective and the objective building blocks of the universe, they come together in what is called a wave-particle duality. It's down to the subatomic particles. Natural law is everywhere. So congestion pricing it's not about reducing traffic. It's not about emissions or even collecting money for the government. It's about obstruction. It's about preventing people from getting together, making it more painful to work, and making it more difficult to live among others. And this is coming to New York City now. It's going to be called the Congestion Relief Zone. They're going to call it that. Passenger vehicles without the Easy Pass are going to be required to pay $13.50, right? So they say it's $9, but if you don't have the Easy Pass, which of course costs, then it's going to be $13.50. Smaller single-unit trucks, including pickup trucks and vans with modified beds, they're going to pay $14.40. That's with the pass, of course. I'm sure there's more without it. Large multi-unit trucks and sightseeing buses will be charged a peak toll of $21.60. $20 fee on every truck that enters Manhattan. Look at how much money they're going to make here. And isn't it surreal and ironic that a pay-to-enter section of the city is going to be called the Congestion Relief Zone? What a joke that is. It's really an occupied area. It's quite accurate to think of it as an armed takeover, actually. You know, we hear about safe zones and relief zones, like humanitarian zones. It's usually in the context of war. So it should not be lost on us the terrible irony and mockery in the name. Congestion Relief Zone. How wildly detached from reality this euphemism is. Okay? We might as well call the Gaza Strip a relief zone, right? What, being relieved of our freedom and property, right? And that's New York, but this is, Europe is so much worse in this regard already. And of course, I'll talk about where it comes from. All of it, it's the United Nations. Congestion pricing has already been implemented in a handful of cities in the world. London, Singapore, Stockholm. They have it in Rome. It was originally tried in Santiago in Chile. It's a stepping stone process, and I'm not just saying that here. I'm not just saying it's from the United Nations. It actually has a name. It's called mobility transition. Mobility transition is a set of technological and political processes of converting traffic, including freight transport and mobility, to sustainable transport and renewable energy resources, and an integration of several different modes of private transport and local public transport. Now, you heard the word sustainable. The word sustainable is a dead giveaway for United Nations goals. Like, those are their sustainable development goals. And the United Nations, I've said it before, it is global government. People disagree with that statement because they think, well, if it's global government, where is their army? Where are their laws? They don't behave like a tyrants because they don't behave like the authorities that we're used to. Their power goes unseen because their power is influence. In the Fabian Society, Antonio Gramsci, Herbert Marcuse, they tried to tell people, but no one listened, that the new government, the actual socialist global government, will be influence and not ruled by fist. Nobody listened. So their laws come out in the form of publications that pose as scientific. They masquerade as advisory. They're not advisory. They're the law. It's like misplacing a book in the wrong section of the library. It reads like this is a scientific publication, but for those who can understand and read their language, that's the actual law being passed. That's a royal decree being passed. And when we talk about armies, our armies are their armies. The United States Army is the United Nations Army. Don't get it twisted. International diplomacy through NATO and all of those agreements and all the treaties, that ensures that any nation that's not in line with the United Nations agenda goes to war. They're going to face war. They're going to face invasion. Verified. There's a long list of dead dictators that got out of line. I think we call it regime change. Has there not been enough of that? So it's called mobility transition. What's mobility transition? It's transition of mobility from what? From the individual, from private, to the collective, to public. Private transportation to public transportation. But it's interesting because the definition of the word mobility is the ability to move, mobility. But the definition of free, actually, if we talk about freedom, the state of being free, the definition of free means not confined. So mobility means the same thing as freedom. So when we talk about mobility transition, it's freedom transition. The transition of freedom from the individual to the collective. Reading a bit of this. In some cases, a mobility transition is also presented as a paradigm shift of the understanding of ownership. Collective use of means of transport makes it possible to use modes of transportation adapted to specific needs, such as car sharing, peer-to-peer car sharing, and bicycle sharing systems. A whole lot of sharing. And we've gone from means of production to means of transport. Indeed, this is a freedom transition. Look at this. They have a thing called the mobility pyramid. I found this cute little graphic. And it's very telling what I just read, that phrase paradigm shift. It always strikes me how alarmingly dystopian the messaging is when it comes to sustainability. You have here an upside down pyramid. Like, I can almost see the Baphomet with the horns. You're looking at an inversion of nature. A funneling of power. But let's break it down what they're talking about. The first, in the green, you have active mobility. And I see it the other way around, actually. Active means in motion, right? But it also means in control. Being active means you're controlling the direction of something. So when we talk about mobility, say if we're talking about work, me with a hammer and a chisel chipping away at limestone, okay? Is that more active? Or is it more active to have a fucking rotary hammer blasting it open, cracking its core, right? So which one of those are more active? obviously the one with the rotary hammer, okay? Not me swinging and drenched in sweat because I'm hitting the chisel with the hammer. No, that I could stand there relaxed with the hammer, with the rotary hammer, with a power drill, cracking the whole thing open. That's more active. That's causing more activity to be done. Activity is defined by the work performed. So when they talk about active mobility and you got a guy on a bike and somebody walking, what they're talking about is recreational mobility. They're talking about walking, bicycling. Those are, recreational. It's physical activity in reference to your body, but that is not active mobility. I hope a day does come, though, where vehicles become a disadvantage. I actually do. And I actually hope there comes a day where being on foot will be active mobility. But that would be the day where this agenda gets pushed too far, gets pushed too quickly, and there's going to be guerrilla urban warfare a la Warsaw Uprising. That will be a beautiful day, and I'm waiting for that day where it actually becomes a disadvantage to be in a tank because you're going to get a Molotov cocktail thrown on you, and you're going to sit there and cook like the old boiling bowl of the medieval age executions. It's going to come full circle if that happens, but I wouldn't count on it because really I don't even advocate. I've advocated for armed rebellion on this channel, but I don't focus on that anymore because really the key is understanding. If people don't understand what's going on, it doesn't even matter if we go to war. There's no point. It's not going to work. But anyway, that's what you would call active mobility. Now, next, you have public transport, shared cars, and rides. And indeed, this is what's being encouraged everywhere. It's bike and scooter rentals everywhere. Like in my city, Chicago, these rental stations near train stations. You get off the train, you get the bike, you get the scooter. You drive to where you're going to go. Then you drop off the bike there, and then you go to work. You go to the next train, right? It's a great option to move around the city. Like, I'm not against it per se, but just understand that this is being done to discourage ownership. And I've noticed such a spike in, like, coinciding with this is all these parking enforcement agents. These guys with their vests, they walk around like zombies with their little device, just writing up license plates. And every time they do, $75, $100, $50, $75, they profit from the people's desperation, because when you're trying to park in the city, you're willing to risk a ticket. You went all that time, you sat in the traffic, you're trying to get somewhere. Okay, you're not just visiting. And these are the people that are getting the tickets. And this is somebody who's actually trying to get something done. They have a productive goal for their efforts. And you have a person that's just a leech that gets paid hourly to charge you for nothing, right? Parking should be first come, first serve. And just because these companies, they take a couple of pennies off the top of what they get from us, and they build the roads, and they act like they own the roads. They don't own. The city does not own the roads. You're driving down the road. You own the road. Okay. Nobody owns the road, just like nobody owns an ocean. Nobody owns the pool of water. Okay. But they will try to tell you they do. And how insulting is it really, like, to take all this money for parking, for the red light cameras, for the speed cameras? They're taking all this money, then to force you to give up driving a car in the city now, for you to totally surrender that property ownership, and then they call it shared transport. The way you share a jail cell, I guess, right? But, we saw active mobility. This is actually passive mobility. This public transportation. Active mobility is actually controlling your own path. So walking in a way is active mobility, so is driving. But public transportation is actually passive mobility. But then even that goes in yellow, and then you get the great sin, okay? The great crime, driving alone in the big red triangle, almost like a tombstone in the ground, driving alone. Even the phrasing driving alone, what does that mean? Like driving alone, like being driven into loneliness. And isn't that the primordial human fear? Abandonment, being driven from safety, driven alone. The wording is absolutely not accidental. Again, how could I come on every week and point out linguistic programming? Like, Clearly, this is being done by people with a deep understanding of psychology. But I'm not just going to talk like that. I'm going to do some cross-referencing to point out who these psychological manipulators are. And here's one. This is from the WEF, the World Economic Forum. It's a publication called Guidelines for City Mobility, Steering Towards Collaboration. So when you look at mobility, urban mobility, mobility transition, you're going to see a lot of that in the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, it was founded in 1971, but really, this came into prominence around the pandemic. I don't know if you guys remember, that was around the time nobody talked about the World Economic Forum then. We heard of United Nations, we heard of Bilderberg, but not the World Economic Forum much, not Davos as much. We heard of the G7 summit, G20 summit. Although there were some rumblings about WEF in 2017 and 2018. And of course, a lot could be said about the connection between the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and the COVID-19 pandemic. It's why I bring it up. There are a lot of connections there, but it just happens to be that's when the World Economic Forum started to become a whole lot more involved in its public messaging. And surprisingly, traffic is one of the things that are involved in this. And for those who continue to live as usual in 2020, like me, especially around March, I continued to drive. I didn't miss a single day of work. It was just business as usual. So if you were out there, if you live in a city and you were out there during that lockdown, you got to experience how it was. The whole road was open to you. For several months, up to a year, you could travel the entire city with no traffic, no interruptions, no road rage, no anything. It was a beautiful thing, really. It really was. Now, in 2024, today, I'm talking especially this week, and increasingly so this summer, it seems like traffic is worse than it has ever been. I don't know how it is. I hope you comment like how it is in your city. How is traffic recently? Have you noticed a spike? Because I don't know. But me living in Chicago, talking to people who live in Chicago, it's worse than it has ever been. On Friday, I drove an hour and a half to get home in what is usually 45 to 50 minutes. I know that's how Fridays are, of course. But there is a point to this. So again, imagine my surprise when I found out that the COVID-19 pandemic, it's actually an influencing factor when it comes to mobility transition. There's a whole section about it. The COVID-19 pandemic made it clear that work and transport could be organized differently, even in a comparatively short time. An increased focus on working from home could save millions of tons of greenhouse gases. And I point it out because it's another example of psychological strategies being inflicted on the people. 4 years ago, we all experienced a time period where no one had to work hard anymore. You would have little to zero production, but yet there was food on the table somehow. How is that possible? It was all thanks to government. Thanks to the globally coordinated central planning pandemic response. And that time period, where it seems like things aren't getting done, everything's just kind of loose, but your physical needs are taken care of. How is this any different from the Soviet economy? The stimulus checks, they were the new slips and food cards, right? If you couldn't pay your rent, no one got evicted. If you couldn't pay your bills, no one locked you up. No one put you in jail. It was like an extended vacation. I'm bypassing now the people who were sick. I'm bypassing the separation of the families. I'm not saying it was peachy. But as far as we're talking production now, it was like an extended vacation. And if you're anything like me, you know how hard it is and how unpleasant it is to get back into the flow of things after an extended vacation. And that's what it is now. It's priming people to accept all sorts of changes in life, just to get those traffic and those work conditions back to a more comfortable level that we experience and we get used to. When people get used to comfort, it's hard to break that habit. If you have a cat and you have a morning routine with the cat, right? You're gonna give him some love. It's gonna take a long time before he doesn't he's gonna be waiting for you in the morning until you wake up, right? Once you get that little bit of comfort, you get that warmth. You're trying to get it back always. That's how it goes. And they've done that here, and they're trying to teach us a lesson. That's where you see that in that little paragraph. The COVID-19 pandemic made it clear that work and transport can be organized differently. So that's what they're telling you is we've got these solutions. If you want the comfort back, we've got a way for you to get it. That's really that simple. Now, of course, with that, enter the World Economic Forum and the United Nations predetermined outcomes. Here's what they say. Numerous regulatory control measures are possible for congestion charges, aviation taxation and subsidies such as a jet fuel tax and a departure tax, a reform of company car taxation, parking space management, for example through pay and display, or an extension of the emissions trading to road traffic. The introduction of speed limits or lowering existing speed limits would also have an impact on greenhouse gas emissions such as carbon dioxide and nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide. Passenger cars consume a disproportionately large amount of fuel at higher speeds. A speed limit can also have a secondary emissions reducing effects about which there is still considerable uncertainty. Lower maximum speeds and longer travel times can contribute to a shift of traffic to rail and the promotion of vehicles with lower engine power. The externalities of traffic, namely the impact of air pollution caused by motor vehicles has on society and the environment, must be also taken into account here. There's almost too much to get into, but I've said all these things before. It's about reducing speed, reducing power, and they've mentioned it. It's about driving people to train transport, making it harder to drive, lower speed limits. That they're claiming it to be, they're claiming that it's to deal with carbon emissions, but carbon emissions are just a function of our activity as humans operate today. So it's really, again, a reduction of movement. It's a reduction of production. But I include this because of the speed limit specifically. And this was interesting. I found that the 2019 Dutch nitrogen emissions crisis, which indirectly caused the Dutch farmers' protest, convinced the government in November of 2019 to lower the speed limits in the Netherlands on national roads to 100 kilometers per hour during the day from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's 60 miles an hour. Some of us may be surprised to hear that. Like, that's lowering? Like, we're used to low speed limits in the United States. Actually, we've been hit pretty hard by speed limits. In Europe, driving is a lot more aggressive. It is a lot more robust. You can, like, once you get on those open roads, you can drive fast. And in general, people drive more aggressively, which I'm not saying is right, but I'm saying at least they don't have those restrictions that we have here. But the point is, again, back to it, these Dutch farmers protests, anytime you get these trucker protests, Canadian trucker protests, Dutch farmers protests, and they're saying we're tired of these United Nations, these global practices, or whatever they're talking about, right? I'm not going to throw them all in one basket. Everybody always gets excited about that. Everybody says, wow, finally the people are rising up. It's the farmers. We have to stand with the farmers. They're against the European Union. They're against all this stuff. I always downplay it. I don't like doing it. I don't always enjoy being a contrarian, but protests always lead to more control, not less. Right? They got to be, you to get some real action done. It's not really a protest. It's one of these. It's really like the kind of response that got these laws pushed back. It is straight anger, but it's at the grassroots level. Once you get picket signs and you get trucks lined up, you're shutting down production now. So it's actually it's very Hegelian. It's very difficult, right? Because on the one hand, you want to show your disapproval. You need to show them that these things that are being implemented is not okay. On the other hand, if you're disrupting everyday life, you are causing anxiety and unease in the people, and they're going to side with the government actually against you because they're going to want to be able to get to work. They're going to want to, make sure their Christmas presents get there on time. So they're not going to support your protests They're not going to support your strikes. So it actually divides the people. And that's what happened after this Dutch farmers protest that everybody got so excited about. They actually lowered the speed limits. So how effective was that? Now, I keep mentioning it. Let's verify it. Let's talk about some of the resources and references. I've often mentioned it's not very easy to find the origins of the control structure of the globalist collectivist ideologies. It's not that easy to trace it back to the United Nations, which I would claim is, that's not the only global government that we have. But if we have to agree on what it is, the United Nations is that. There are, of course, this is a spider that has a lot of links in the web and is all 360 directions. But the United Nations is a good place to start when we come to talking about global government. And here it is. All you have to do is go to the United Nations website, un.org, and really sdgs.un.org, meaning Sustainable Development Goals, .unitednations.org. And then you have all of their sustainable goals. One of them is sustainable transport. And we talked about mobility, transport, mobility transition. We're talking about transport. We're talking about sustainability. This is it right here. And it's, like I said, it's not that easy to find because I've said that the United Nations has the best PR in the world. It's the most friendly corporation in the world when it comes to like how good their public image is. All they do is destroy the world, and nobody even has any kind of antipathy to them. They don't get the kind of Bilderberg, World Economic Forum, WHO. They don't get any of that sting from the people, but they are behind all of it. And they have sustainable transport conferences. They have all kinds of conferences when they talk about this. This is just one. This is Progress Report 2013-2014 of the Working Group on Sustainable Transport. Here you see all of these different organizations, European Investment Bank. This is just for you to see who else is involved, right? Everybody's involved. It really is a global thing. Quick quote from a section called Supporting Low Carbon Growth. It reads, industrial countries with high levels of vehicle ownership and use currently emit the majority of greenhouse gases from the transport sector. Such high dependence on motorized transport is also correlated with high levels of traffic congestion, road safety impacts, and increased air pollution. I read that to tell you that they're, through implication of what they're talking about, traffic congestion. So how do you solve traffic congestion? You need to get less cars on the road. So you're going to start charging the cars to lighten the traffic. When they talk about road safety impacts, well, how do you deal with road safety? How do you make the road more safe if you were doing that? You would lower the speed limits. And that's what they had done. Now look, lowering the speed limits is going to cause fewer collisions. It just is. But look at what else is doing. Destroying the entire way of life. And of course, increasing air pollution. They're trying to cut down on the single emitters. They're trying to cut down on emitters in general. Charging more companies, so the companies have to close down. So there are only a few companies. There are not a bunch of delivery companies. There's only going to be FedEx and UPS. There's only going to be Amazon. That's the point of these regulations. Big business for big government. And the reason I dig this document up is to prove that it's the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and otherwise known as international think tanks. That's who's creating these programs. It's not your governor. Governor Kathy Hochul will claim it as her own. I say remember this when the world is changing around you. They want you to be mad at your president, at your governors, at your senators. They want you to vote them out. You can vote them out and change them. You're never going to vote out the president of the United Nations. You're not going to vote out Klaus Schwab from running the WEF. You're not going to vote out the president of the World Bank. And need I say more? Like with that, I hope with that I have connected some of the disconnected. Now, let me just be candid here. What I see going on in the world It's not financial, it's not even governance. It's psychic castration. All the narratives I see, from sustainability to environmentalism, all the way down to patriotism and Donald Trump. On both sides of this worldview spectrum, I see an attack on real men. That's what it comes down to for me. When it comes to leadership, integrity matters. The record of what you've said matters. And your energy absolutely matters, how you present yourself. I don't get how you can stand across from and salute in front of a man that tans himself. We're supposed to take these guys seriously, Trump, Elon, when they've done all these dances, they've done all these commercials, and they jump on every trend. They've done this, And men today not only fall into loving them or hating them, they can't stop talking about them. Like, people are obsessed. And that would be bad enough. But the worst is that men have very little views of their own, individual views. They all come from the general church, or they come from the general party. They come from some kind of, like, the podcast they listen to. But very little of their own ideas informed by their own life experience. People have such an underdeveloped holistic knowledge base, and an even more underdeveloped killer instinct. And it's to the point where I think most people have actually just come to accept that this is what men are. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Elon Musk, that's what men act like. No. I'm from the world of normal men. I'm a normal guy. I'm not going to make faces for the thumbnail. I'm never going to be in commercials. I'm never going to advertise sponsors. I'll never get on a trend and dance around and jump on the bandwagon and then post things and then have statements come out and look stupid 10 years later. I'm never going to have to apologize for or take back something I said here on my platform. Al Pacino said in Scarface, "All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one." That's what it comes down to for me. And when I say killer instinct, like, I'm not talking about a bad boy image. I'm not just talking about Tony Montana, okay? Although I've been that, and deep down I will always be that guy that's just ready to fight and risk everything. True. But that's not killer instinct. By killer instinct, I mean the sense. First of all, it's a sense, a recognition that when injustice happens, when violence, abuse, taking advantage of the innocent, of the defenseless, when that happens, you have the sense to recognize when it's happening. Because abuse always happens in the shadows. It's never out in the open. So it's the sense to recognize it and the internal fire to act. It's a fire. It's a will to act. It's a courage to act. And whether that means to kill somebody in broad day where they stand, or whether it means getting up in front of a crowd and to speak the truth face to face, even though you've got the barrel of a gun pointed at you, or whether it means doing a weekly podcast. That's what it means. That's what the killer instinct is, okay? Nobody else sees it. You see a threat coming. You know the threat's going to take away everything you have. You know it's going to hurt the women and the children. The killer instinct now is to stop playing nice. It's not time to be, it's time to come out from under the blankets in front of the fireplace. And it's time to put your nose to the grindstone. It's time to get your hands dirty, and it's time to make some unpleasant decisions. Unpleasant for both you and the person trying to transgress. And I don't mean to exclude you lovely ladies from that work. And God knows there are warriors among you too. In fact, I'd say most women are. Like, the motherly instinct is the killer instinct. Like, when a mom sees that her baby's in danger, she's going to be just as vicious and relentless in defense of her family. Probably more so. Okay, it's even more unrefined and pure than even the male instinct, which is very powerful. But we as men, we have our own wheelhouse. We have our own playground. We have our specialty. And taking it back to this episode, the road is one of them. The road and cars, it's one of these things that, men do. And when it comes to driving and the road, it's always been an expression of the man, from when they're boys and they play with cars to when they're adults, okay? And they're cleaning their cars and they're modifying their cars. From the car he drives to the way he drives, it's an expression of the man. We can get into the expression and the way a woman feels in the passenger seat when it becomes clear that the vehicle is an extension of the man. He's sharing his innermost identity with her. He's inviting you to experience his innermost self, like the man is the car. The quote from one of these movies, The Transporter, the way a man treats his car is the way he treats himself. It's just an action movie, but I really think that's a profound statement. It's not just a vehicle, it's also your vehicle, your body, how you treat yourself. But the car specifically is a masculine area, right? Of course it is. But now what I'm really referring to is that industrial city district, like Lower Manhattan, okay, like downtown Chicago. The trucks, the factories, the transport of resources. All we ever hear about that anymore is the pollution, the greenhouse gases. It makes men seem like agents of entropy, like all they do is drive around aimlessly and toxify the planet. Have we forgotten that all that driving around is for a purpose? All of it is to connect the disconnected. It's not a joyride out there causing all the traffic, okay? It's to bring materials from point A to point B. And to do that in order to create something, to build, to make money, to bring back home to their families, and then build there, to build the family, right? To build the future for their children. Man is an engine of syntropy. Man and woman is an engine of syntropy. Syntropy meaning the ordering force. Man puts things into order. And human beings, we slip into disorder. Men especially, we tend to slip into disorder. I know I have. But a real man comes back and gets his life into order. That's what we do. It's a whole redemption arc, right? Do we not have all of our religions are based on this. Do we not have the entire life of Jesus Christ and redemption? All of the stories we look up to, are they not all redemption stories? Do we not all resonate with this underdog? With this person that comes in and falls and gets back up? Oh my God. I mean, if anything defines humanity, it's that. It's being fallen and being back and getting back up. Now, that's your enemy of the United Nations. It's man himself. Man himself. And what they're doing is they're building an empire of entropy, these globalists. And it's last week with the elections and this week with the congestion pricing. It's the same theme. Episode 1 and episode 2 of the new season of This Week in Tyranny, it's been the same theme. Splitting America in two. It's a divorce that is going on. First, you cause traffic due to urban design. You build the bike lanes, right? It's supposed to be for the bikes. You build the bike lanes, causing more traffic. On the north side, there are a couple blocks where they just shut down the road. It's walking only, right? They set up the red light cameras, red light enforcement, short interval traffic lights. Lights that keep switching, then this one gets to green, this one gets to green. The more you switch, the shorter the interval, the longer it takes to be at that intersection. Because when you have to go from a standstill to pick up speed, then to get a couple cars past the intersection, if you would have just waited 30 seconds longer and let more cars pass, you would reduce the traffic. But they don't do that. There are certain lights that switch all the time, and you're waiting there for 15, 20 minutes. That's how you cause traffic. Then, of course, just the general, our driving habits of being pedestrian friendly. The guy can just walk into the crosswalk. Now, I'm not saying to drive like an asshole and not let people cross. But when it's pedestrian friendly, you're causing traffic. And then, of course, I've talked about the road construction. I'm not saying, again, I get that you have to fix the roads. But we see that these union guys, these people that get the contracts, whether they want to do their best or not, they are unable. There's a clear directive. There's top-down influence to make sure that construction does not get done for a whole year. to make sure it's always under construction. Always something is going to be under construction. It's never just going to be done and orderly. There's a point to that. Okay, that is how you cause the split. Now, when you cause the split and damage the old system, you provide the solution. Okay? Provide the solution to the people. Public transport and financial penalties for cars and trucks. This is what it is. Encouraging and incentivizing public transport. Okay? Active mobility. The goal of this is to do this, if you're doing this in the cities, it goes together with all the other goals. The goal is this fundamental split down to the core. It's a split first inside the self, then a split men from women, and then splitting people on a national level. Entropy, okay? Get everybody to split from each other and be there alone, okay? With no order. But that original split is at a subatomic level. Metaphysically, it's at the subatomic level. Like, it's a metaphor, but it's really not. Like, it's really true. The family and the individual should be viewed like an atom, like a single atom, okay? Proton, neutron, electron. And I'm going to talk about this in the supplementary presentation. It's going to be part 2 of the centropic forces presentation, okay? Sexual desire and thought are twin centropic forces. Part 2 of that, I'm going to do it like I said I would. It's going to be out Thursday, okay? We know that the electrons inside the atom, when we're talking about the atomic structure, they have a wave-particle duality to them. And wave-particle duality, in nature, it ensures, the duality ensures that the principle of free will can never be removed from the world. I know that's a little bit, again, it's going to be in the presentation. I'm just going to have to throw that claim out there, but I've talked about it before in my second presentation I ever made. It was human nature. Transcending the nature versus nurture debate, it was called. The principle of free will can never be removed from the world, and that is encoded physically, it is encoded in the wave-particle duality of the electron. And if you wanted to scientifically, empirically find God, like science is always trying to talk about God and finding the God particle and all this. If you really wanted to do it, like GPS coordinates, where is the creator of the universe? How can you find God? That's the location. It's in the wave particle duality of the electron. Again, I'm going to explain that. But it is like, if you wanted to hack nature, we always want to find all the code behind nature. We want to see how we can, change it, modify it, destroy it, create it. When you get down to wave particle duality, you're done. You're out. You're over your pay grade. You'll never be able to pinpoint it because of the duality. Anytime you try to pinpoint the particle, it behaves like a wave. You would try to see the wave, and you're going to see a particle, not where you thought it was going to be. That is the signature of the creator. Now, what it has to do with the episode is pretty simple. If you obstruct, if you restrict, if you cut down on the wave-like movement of a city, okay, the city is often said to be, teeming with life, like it's pulsating, right? The pulse of the city. If you collapse its flow down to a particle, you stop the life, okay, the circulation of a city, so to speak. If you obstruct, if you resist, if you cut down on the movement, you've taken the wave, you've made it a particle. And this duality is under attack. Duality in general is under attack, and without duality, there is no syntropy. There's only sameness, like I've said. Sameness is what we're seeing a lot more of, down to how we think about gender. Polarity is what allows us to create order. Like, first you need to separate points A and B in order to have a reason to drive. Okay? There's no reason for you to take the wave unless you've got the particles on each side. It's about a drive, right? Why do we drive? We're driving for a reason. And indeed, drive itself is what is under attack. All the drives, the sex drive, the curiosity drive, right? Down to the Lakeshore Drive, down to actually driving down the road. Drive is under attack. The words matter here. And the way you destroy drive, how do you do it? Is by destroying the complementary differences between things. Right? You want to take away that magnetism, that charge. That's how you destroy drive. They told the women to go drive and work out in the cold and out in the rain, in the dark, just like the men, right? And now, what are they doing? They're telling the men not to spread your legs. You're supposed to sit with your knees together like the women do. Not me. I won't be emasculated. Okay? That's it. That's what it comes down to. It's... Yeah, what else needs to be said there? I'll say it in my presentation. But the point is, I see it as the most fundamental attack. Again, this is a psychic castration. And when people try to play with my manhood, I don't go for that. I'm done tolerating this shit. And I hope everybody feels the same way. Tell your friends, okay? Don't be emasculated. And more about that soon in the presentation that is coming out Thursday. It'll be a short one, okay? I call it presentations, but it's valuable to me. I still have to make it. But thank you so much for taking the time to view. Thank you for sharing your time with me. And let's drive this thing. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week in This Week in Tyranny.
The chosen few shall be triumphant and the devil will be decapitated. So you can keep your ducats and your dresses. I won't be emasculated in this world of science.